We can't forget like that we're having a spiritual experience in a human body. Part of being here is pleasure. It's like one of the gifts we have. And, you know, for a while I felt stripped of that like human right. Okay, pleasure is a human right. I am Vasilios. I am a they, them, he, him, and I live in Los Angeles. My life pre-seroconversion was just like, I don't know, a pretty average 19-year-old. I'm from North Carolina originally, and I was just started going to school, and I was kind of feeling that youthful invincibility. I just come out as queer, and very shortly after, I was going to get a routine STI test, and they called me back in like a couple days later. And I remember just like coming back from there, just like pulling over on the highway and like bawling my eyes out, because I was just like, fuck, I don't know what what to do. But like my instinct was to tell my friends, and nobody really knew how to be there for me other than like, let's get drunk. So not the best of coping mechanisms, but at the time it made sense. And my school, UNT Chapel Hill, really wasn't the resource that I needed them to be. I got expelled from school due to my status. They ended up trying to scapegoat me as the center of a mini epidemic happening on campus, although I hadn't had sex with like anybody. Which brings me to like what became a passion of mine is talking about HIV criminalization. Kind of mind-blowing that it's still happening, especially since, you know, the last 5 years. We've had U equals U. The CDC came out and said undetectable equals untransmittable. Then tell me why we're still putting people in jail. I think it's really important to know the laws in your state and to know the facts about living with HIV so that you can feel empowered enough to talk the talk. Disclosure is one of the hardest things to do. So like as soon as I started treatment after having this AIDS diagnosis with 1 to 3 months left to live, I just really focused on building my body back from scratch, because for years I kind of been moving it through sheer will. Feeding myself and making sure I'm nourished and taking my medication. That phase was like the first, 2 or 3 months. And I tell people that I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. After I did that, I just really decided I wanted to get back on my feet and live as much as I could. Being undetectable for the first time in 4 years at that point, I was like, oh my God, I can even enjoy like hooking up again. Also, like by that point, PrEP was a thing. So like sort of people's ideas around hooking up with pause people had started to shift in a new way that it hadn't in forever. If you've just seroconverted, arm yourself with information, especially in the greater South, where stigma is more profound. I mean, it does exist everywhere. But in 24 out of the 50 states, you can go to jail for being HIV positive and not sharing your status. Disclosure is one of the hardest things to do. That being said, I also think it's really important after you seroconvert to find other pause people. I wish I would have reached out to somebody and said, hey, this is what I'm going through, what's up? When I was lying there, just like healing my body back to life, one of my biggest focuses was thinking, okay, like I've gotta like make sure other people aren't gonna go through this, and what can I do? So my first instinct was to just start making stuff. That's like therapy for me in a way, is just creating things, and I like to do visual art. So I started making like visual collages and poems. You know, one of my favorite words is to transmute. So I like to think of it like alchemy. I was turning this sort of lead in myself into gold. And really that's all I could do. Other than that, you know, I felt very spiritual. Like I felt very connected. And being so close to the veil, so to speak, I just really wanted to be in the present and appreciate my life. My most proud moment, like through sharing my art, is probably when it's touched somebody. Like I did this performance in Chicago called Queer, Ill, and Okay, and we did this ritual where we went through like the stages of grief, and also from like seroconversion all the way to like transmuting the virus into light. Like we lit our whole bodies up. It was pretty cool. One person from the over 400 that I performed for came up to me and said, wow, like I've never said I love my HIV before, because that was a toast we made every single person do when they walked in the door. And that really touched me. People who think that there's like this stigma where your life is just going to degrade and it's going to fail and you're going to die, I think that's a remnant of like, unfortunately, our media and the past that we aren't so easily escaping. You know, one of my core beliefs in transforming stigma is that we have to create better stories and creative stories around living with HIV that aren't based on the 80s. Because they just keep coming out the pipeline, and it kind of pisses me off because we're really at a different stage, and to continue telling the same stories over and over again is doing a disservice to us. I think that's a valid concern that's gonna run through your head anytime you're told you have a chronic illness that is incurable. But I hope that we've done a good enough job now and to really give people the ability to see a different kind of future for themselves. My idea of healthy has definitely evolved over time. At first it was just sort of focused on physical health. But once I got through those barriers and kind of felt like I was doing all right, I really just focused on mental health, emotional health, and I think those things are still underrated. I was actually going through a lot mentally and emotionally, just from years of facing stigma in North Carolina. That really took its toll. So for me, I mean, I think healthy, it's such a spectrum, and I really believe that like every day we have to take in what we can to make ourselves feel good. Make sure we have a good network of people to share whatever we're going through. Check in with yourself. I think it's really important for people, especially POS people, to not forget to take care of their needs, and across the board. And one of those is intimacy. One of those is pleasure, joy, love. Like, we all need these things to sustain ourselves. And for me, I had such a deficit of those things for so long that I realized how important they were. So I do have a couple mantras that I love to share with people that I live by on a daily basis. The one that really sort of helped me heal on a spiritual level is a little piece from Rumi. The wound is where the light enters you. For me, that's really profound because HIV is like one of my biggest wounds, but it's definitely where the most light has entered my life. No matter your situation, it's going to be tough, but you're gonna get through that. Here's another mantra. You can't wear a crown with your head down. And I find myself looking down sometimes when I'm having a bad day, and I have to remember this. It's like, literally look up. There's so much beauty around us. And it's like, you're gonna walk through life and you're gonna pass it by if you don't take a second. Take a couple deep breaths and just remember where you are. Remember who you are. Do the thing that brings you joy and do that as much as possible. Period.